Innsmouth, stranger.
Hi, I'm Rob Whiten from the Innsmouth Book Club. Join me and my fellow guide John Chadwick as we take you on a fortnightly tour of Innsmouth. We visit places such as the Picture House, the Library and Innsmouth Museum to discuss all aspects of weird fiction, whether it be book, film, music, TV or art. As well as that, we stop over at the Gilman House to have a chat with a resident guest. That includes authors, artists, musicians, in fact Lovecraftian creatives of all types. You can find our free shows on Patreon, and there you can also sign up as a patron, which brings you bonus content, plus a monthly PDF copy of Innsmouth News, which features articles, author spotlights, all the latest news and reviews, and more. You can find us at patreon.com/InnsmouthBC. We hope to see you soon, because remember, Innsmouth isn't just a place, it's a state of mind.
You're listening to KZOM, Oleander Public Radio.
Greetings, listeners. It is I, TV Spitzer and Farmer Dave, here once again to talk to you about the Cthulhu mythos, its books, its monsters, its unfortunate human casualties, its timeline in general, and even its tangential bits, like the dreamlands or things of a weird nature that are Lovecraftian leaning. Once more we head into those dark woods, further feeling those malevolent forces upon us. Once again we walk down the lightless stone staircase in the middle of nowhere.
You're listening to KZOM.
Hello everyone, it is me, one of your hosts, DB Spitzer. Farmer Dave, how's it going, Farmer Dave? Second.
It is well, and I am host number 2.
Yeah. To my virtual northeast.
Unless you're standing on your head.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I now have kind of like a control center thing going on in the studio, so it's really hard to say. It's like, well, if my microphone's north. My mic stand continues that way. Dave's northeast, and
I was told there would be no math.
but the main monitor that I look at is northwest. But the monitor that I look at to check out Skype is directly east. So anyway. Hey, how's things? How's things on your side of People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos?
It is well. We are apparently we now live in northern Oregon because it's raining. I haven't seen rain like this for years. It's good. It's good. It's muddy
been
on the farm.
It's been nice. It's like moss has gotten even greener everywhere. Everything's really, really, really green for this time of year. I'm used to it being kind of like everything's super dead, but it's been really nice and green. So it's kind of weird. I know people, friends of the show, listeners of the show in the Southwest and in California, have been talking about just like how it's like spring there. And I'm thinking, it's like spring here. It's like 50 degrees, and it's a torrential downpour and windy. So, yeah.
So, know what we do have?
What do we have?
Well, I told you a couple weeks ago we had lambs, right?
Yeah.
So we have a bummer lamb.
Okay.
You know what a bummer lamb is? And it's not quite full bummer lamb. You know what a bummer lamb is?
What's a bummer lamb?
As far as I know, this is where the term bummer comes from. It's a lamb that won't, for either the mother or its reason or whatever, won't latch onto its mom to get milk. And so it's not uncommon if you've got 3 animals that the mom can't keep track of too.
Okay.
And we're thinking, well, maybe this poor little brown lamb that we've got, maybe it just needs more milk.
Sure.
So, and we call it yeller because it yells.
Uh-huh.
And so we took it in and we'll just feed it some milk. Oh, Mama realized it was missing a lamb. So it's in the house and Mom is going, meh, and it's going, meh. And so they have this conversation. It's out in the back. Mom is out in the backyard part of the fields. But so it's not a full bummer. And the mom knows it's there. It's just, I think maybe it's just and this is just, it might be just a rub because it's much smaller than his brothers. So he comes in 3 days or 3 times a day, and then we take him back out because, lambs are just so loud.
Yeah, no.
Because our listeners will pretty soon hear what the baby sheep, but the lambs are just terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, not terrible; they're just loud.
Sure.
So yeah, we've been dealing with a little bit of a bummer, but as soon as it gets in, the mom gives us a look and tries to feed it and says, "Why are you telling me how to do my job?"
Well, as someone who uses the term bummer all the time, as being a West Coast dude that I am,
yes. I'm pretty sure maybe the words develop separately, but I'm pretty sure that's where the word bummer comes from.
Yeah, no, it sounds like if I just look at the spelling of it, it looks like one of those old English words like bug, boomer, bog. A lot of B sounds.
I figured though that'd be a cool name for a band. It's the Bummer Lambs.
Yeah, no, kind of like a I don't know, like a Celtish shoegaze band. And here we are. So, what are we talking about this week since we're not talking about Bummer Lambs?
So, we are talking a couple of things.
Yeah.
We are talking about formless spawn.
Ooh.
And we are talking about the leader of the fire vampires.
Whoa, fire vampires and their leader? That's crazy. That's like a 2-for-1.
Yes, it is. and we'll find out a little bit why they are so related to their leader.
Yeah. Okay, sounds cool. Do we have anyone that we're talking to this week?
Yes. So we have a second time he has appeared on the show.
Cool.
And that is Phil Layman.
Oh,
and
cool.
Phil Layman we're talking about him and saying, yeah, Phil, you were on the show, what? He said 5 months ago. I go, 5 months ago? It can't be. Yeah, it's September. It's been 5 months. Wow.
That's like 3 seasons ago with this show.
Honestly. And so Phil, among other things, he does a lot of LARP. And he in the past, last time while he was on the show, he talked about some of the LARPing he was doing and some Mythos LARPing.
Nice.
But we both have a sort of shared passion in a fictitious character. And that is the Star Wars Marvel Comics character, Dr. Aphra. And yes, I do have a goat named Dr. Aphra.
Yeah.
And so we kind of talk about our mutual appreciation of Dr. A.
Cool. Very cool. I don't know a lot about Dr. A, so I'm going to be excited to listen.
You will after the show.
Very cool. All right. So, I was thinking, Dave's Corner of the podcast, we should definitely talk about that fire vampire.
So let's just talk about the fire vampires and their leader, whose name is, how would you pronounce it? FTHAGGUA?
I say FTHAGGUA, yeah.
FTHAGGUA. Now, remember we had talked, probably about 2 months ago about Cthulhu.
Yeah.
And I got the two confused. So I've done some since then. I felt very embarrassed, but I kind of see the connection.
Oh, yeah.
So So first of all, FTHAGGUA
Mm-hmm.
appears in the story Fire Vampire.
Yeah.
But before we talk about the story, I think we really have to talk about the author, Donald Wandrei.
Yes.
So anything you wanted to bring on about Donald Wandrei before?
Oh, Donald Wandrei, pulp writer extraordinaire.
Although he wrote about 60 pulp stories, his brother, Howard Wandrei, published over 200.
That's crazy.
But Donald, I think, is definitely more remembered.
Yeah. Friends with Augie Dog Derleth. I think one of the founding people of Arkham House, or one of the
he was the co-founder of Arkham House.
Yeah, let's see. And off the top of my head, that's all I can think about Donald Wandrei.
So in 1927, so we think of all of the, of Lovecraft of being this master of correspondence.
Sure, yeah.
Wandrei was basically the first of the circle writers with him and Lovecraft. And so in 1927, at the age of about 19, Wandrei says, I'm going to go meet Lovecraft. And so he hitchhikes all the way out to meet Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Who at this time was a beginning author. And so there's this very famous story that Wandrei tells about them and another guy where they go to this ice cream parlor and they try like samples of all 29 flavors. And I could just see Lovecraft, can I have a little spoon of that strawberry? Or, I just imagine them, by the time they filled up, it was just like 29 samples from different flavors.
Yeah.
And I can still see Lovecraft doing that. So Wandrei is also important because he's the person who convinced Farnsworth Wright to publish Call of Cthulhu. And he basically said, if you don't do it, someone else is. He is predominantly he's known, in fact, it's Wandrei's poetry that kind of inspires Lovecraft to write the Fungi from Yugoth.
Okay.
And I always sort of figured it was Clark Ashton Smith who Lovecraft loved as a poet, but and then there's some definite truth to that. But specifically going over Wandrei's poetry, that Lovecraft said, I'm going to sit down and try my own hand at it. He is basically a science fiction writer. And I would say, as we discuss these fire vampires, very much a pulp science fiction writer. In fact, Robert E. Howard, who infamously did not like science fiction, describes Donald Wandrei as his favorite science fiction writer.
Yeah.
And Howard, is this, he writes horror, he writes adventure. He touches a little science fiction. He just did not like science fiction as a genre.
Yeah.
So, but you are right in that Wandrei also is a co-founder of Arkham House. And he also, so he's born in 1908. That makes him 31.
Okay.
When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. And he joins the army at 31.
Okay.
And through the 40s, and as near as I can tell, not a lot is documented, but I think he stays in the military for a while after World War II. So he kind of disappears a little bit in the 40s and 50s and may have, worked on different TV projects in the 60s that there's still sort of some questions there. But we're going to be talking about the fire vampire.
Fire vampire.
Yeah, and to me, this is much more. I mean, it's considered a mythos story. It is obviously going to influence Derleth.
Yeah.
But to me, the story is much more of a science fiction story. It definitely has gothic, it definitely has cosmic horror aspects, but it's more to me a science fiction story in the part that, it's set in 2321.
Yeah.
So it's set hundreds of years in the future, and where basically this writer's telling the story of this scientist named Gustav Norby.
Yeah.
Who discovers a comet. And then all of a sudden the comet starts jumping all over the place. And that it's actually this intelligent creature, the fire vampires. And one thing that I got from the story, that my first contact with fire vampires was, of course, the Call of Cthulhu mythos story. Call of Cthulhu role-playing game.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't remember ever saying in the rules there, they can take on human form.
Oh.
They got their spies and stuff. But basically, so this comet flies in, and they decide that they want to take over. Well, they want sacrifices. They want thousands of human beings, and if you don't do what we say, we will destroy. Next time we'll ask for hundreds of thousands. And of course, they want Norby because he's this very, astounding pulp fiction scientist. He's the only one that can beat them.
Yeah.
And one of the things he realizes is that FTHAGGUA, their leader, is basically the conscious or part of all of the fire vampires.
Yeah.
So it's sort of it absorbs, and we have Dagon and Mother Hydra. They are the biggest, toughest, meanest, deep ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is all of them. So imagine if Father Hydra, Mother Hydra and Father Dagon had the memory and knowledge and awareness of all the deep ones.
Yeah.
But then, of course, Norby, which is our hero, defeats the fire vampires, and then their comet, Norby's comet, or I think it's Katanga or something, they're all wiped out, so the comet now orbits the Earth.
Yeah.
So very, very, very traditional a pulp science fiction story.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I could see that easily being made into a science fiction film, of course.
Yeah, or especially in the 40s or the 50s.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe not the effects.
Yeah.
Maybe not the effects, but
sure.
But so that's one of, and so Derleth, and at this time, Wandry and Derleth are obviously in communication because they are setting up Arkham House.
Yeah.
Creates Cthulhu, which is a more mythos version of FTHAGGUA. And so that's sort of why I got confused, and I think that kind of hints at some of the Call of Cthulhu gaming supplements that FTHAGGUA is more like sort of the leader of the fire vampires.
Yeah.
Cthulhu is an outer god.
Yeah.
Or a great old one.
All right, that makes sense. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah, that's kind of a scary idea. That's like there's one main one who is bigger than the rest of them, but there's also this being that is all of them combined. That's knows.
It's sort of it's what we would now call a hive mind.
Correct. Yeah. It makes me think of Starro in the Suicide Squad. Not Suicide Squad, but the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, Starro's in that.
Yeah. And definitely, I think Starro is obviously influenced by the pulp writings.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm getting conflicting things that, Wandering may or may not had some influence over DC at the time. So, but definitely, I see I see a connection, even if it's an accidental connection between Starro and, say, the fire vampires.
Yeah, definitely. One of my faves, Starro. Fire vampires are pretty cool too. I've used them pretty much. I think I've talked about this before. I've pretty much treated fire vampires like Fire Starro. I mean, not a lot. I mean, that's just invisible. What are those other ones? Those like blood vampires or no?
The blood vampires?
Yeah.
Which are And I believe they were created by Block. But I'm going off the top of my memory.
Yeah. No. It's like part of me is like has this headcanon of like Donald Wonder's like, oh, I need a mythos idea. Hey, Block. What do you got? I got a great idea for you, Donnie. It's called Fire Vampires. And then he's like, oh, that's great. I'm going to write that right now. And it just wrote itself. Fire vampires.
So I use fire vampires like if I'm running Call of Cthulhu as sort of an excuse. Use them as UFOs.
Oh yeah.
Have the investigators come into a town investigating UFOs. What people are thinking UFOs, and then instead of alien ships, it's fire vampires.
Yeah, no, I've definitely used fire vampires for people like camping in Yellowstone or something like that. Just kind of like to kick off like a Cthulhu, like, whoa.
No, you can hear our guardian livestock dogs are protecting.
Yeah, but no, definitely have them. Sorry. What was I talking about?
Fire vampires.
No, definitely have them set up kind of like Starro in a way, and treat them like that. Have them be something that like is being kept away from people. Oh no, I was talking about fire vampires in Montana, but that's not what we're talking about this week. We're not talking about. I mean, starting fires in like Yellowstone or Glacier National Park, places where people are cut off from civilization, and then like trying to explain to a park ranger that sentient fire is following you. I don't know if that's like kind of like a trope with fire vampires, but that's what I've always done with it, is like treat it almost like Friday the 13th or like a slasher film, except for it's not some dead guy with a gross face. It's like a bunch of little things that can form into one big thing that can follow you, and those little things can catch stuff on fire. But they can also go through keyholes, and they can heat things up, and they can explode cars, and they can cut power lines, because they understand our technology better than we do.
Well, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Or let's say you got D&D. Let's take this. You got a D&D game.
Sure.
You want to sort of mythos up a little bit. What if there's, instead of fire vampires, FTHAGGUA is sort of the collection of all the fire elementals.
Ooh. That's scary.
And so every time that like an elemental comes to this plane, FTHAGGUA knows who they fought and knows who's attacked them. And, he has, since, the Earth core has cooled history, but he would also make a pretty powerful patron for a fire warlock.
Yeah, you're always thinking of patrons for warlocks, it seems, but yeah. That's a good idea. I like that a lot. I do like that a lot. This isn't D&D on D&D yet, but definitely. I mean, I feel like there's a fair amount of what you could do with FTHAGGUA. You can have fire cults, cults that are super that think that FTHAGGUA cares what they are, or what more or less a cargo cult to FTHAGGUA of extreme individuals doing extreme things. This could be in D&D. This could be in Shadowrun, Cyberpunk, Boot Hill,
and say Pyromaniac who's lighting fires because he's trying to get FTHAGGUA's attention.
Oh, yeah, and screams in like a Starscream type voice that neither of us want to do right now to mess up our voices, but, insane piercings and fire tattoos on their arms and body, and, just kind of, you could, like, really play it up for your characters. Or if you're writing a story, this is, like, not your main bad guy, but this is your chaotic bad guy, the wild card who pops up multiple times and is kind of like, maybe Guardian Threshold. We're going to go back to the Joseph Campbell for a moment. And then, ends up being part of your team and then betrays you, and then you have to kill him. And then you have, like, your secondary bad guy, and then you have your main bad guy, and then everyone's happy, and then you have your flight from the fortress, and then return to the village and all that kind of fun stuff. But definitely, I think you could do some really cool things with FTHAGGUA, fire vampires in general. You could have a bad guy who, like you talked about how fire vampires can inhabit people or take on human form. That's scary as heck.
Yeah.
Like, imagine, like, back to the Friday the 13th, being stalked through, some national forest, Joshua Tree, your friends decide to go abroad from Germany or Sweden, and you travel America. You camp in Joshua Tree National Park, and there's this, like, fireman following you. But not hook and ladder fireman, a man of fire, or a fire lady, I
think there's a lot of potential there.
Oh yeah. All right. Anything else you have to say before we put out this fire?
We covered this subject pretty well.
Okay. Cool. Well, as we douse this with a utility shovel of commercials, we'll see you after Dave talks to our good friend again, and they're going to talk about Dr. A, and then I'm going to sing the theme song for D&D on D&D with Dave's accompaniment, and then we'll be talking about, we're talking about Gath and Athoa? No, we're talking about Formless Spawn, Children of Tsathoggua, not the elephantine things, but the guardians of Tsathoggwa's temples. Ask Zaphros that Clark Ashens. We'll see you after the break, everyone. And Dave, any words before we go into the break?
Nope.
All right. We'll see you in a bit.
Thank you once again for listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. You can help show your support by going to the show notes and following any of the links that'll tell you how to support the show and how to support our guests. And thank you to all of our guests who you can find in the show notes. Rate, review, subscribe, and remember, patrons get priority access to asking us questions, suggesting topics, even, submitting stuff. Actually, you don't have to be a patron to submit anything. That's how Dave got on the show, and that's how you can get on the show too. It's the People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends. Thank you for listening. Back to the show.
So once again, we are at the part of the show where I am not talking to DB and I am not talking to myself and only occasionally talk to Ralph the Rooster when he pops in. And today we're talking to Phil Layman, who you guys may remember. We were just talking. Said, yeah, you were on the show 5 months ago, and that was September. I'm thinking, no. September was 2-3 months ago, wasn't it? But it's been about 5 months. Yeah, it's been about 5 months since you've been on the show. So maybe you can remind people who you are and maybe catch us up with what's going on.
I'm glad to be back. I am a LARP crafter and a former comic book artist. I used to publish my own graphic novel, and that's why I'm glad to be talking with Dave tonight about one of our mutual favorite comic book characters, Dr. Aphra.
Yes, that's my girl. That is my girl. So yeah, doesn't have anything Lovecraft related, really. Well, maybe a little. She actually, there is kind of a Lovecraft type. We'll talk in a little bit later. But maybe for those of you who haven't heard who Dr. Aphra is, maybe you want to introduce her.
Yeah. Her full name I think it's pronounced Chelly, Dr. Chelly Aphra, and she describes herself sometimes as a rogue archaeologist in the timeline of the middle trilogy of Star Wars, so episodes 4, 5, and 6. And she's typically employed by Darth Vader to do dark things. He doesn't want the Imperials to know, what he's up to. And she's very much a gray character. She's somewhere between the dark and the light. And I just find her very compelling as a character. She's very original. And I really enjoy reading her adventures.
I kind of describe her as a combination between Boba Fett, but that's before he kind of, the book of Boba Fett kind of changed him a little bit, but between Boba Fett and Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I think sometimes she's kind of like a female Indiana Jones who got tempted by Belloc too much, because at the beginning of her stories, she appears in the Darth Vader series of comics before they spun her off in her own, and she gets a little bit more light. She gets a little bit more towards the lighter side of the Force, a little bit more. Listens to her heart, maybe, and not so greedy.
Yeah,
in her own adventures.
There's some definite character growth in this character, in the fact that she's not overtly evil, but at least now she'll do about anything it comes down to save her life.
Right.
But she won't go out and betray people unless she has to.
Absolutely. And that's what I like her. I think she's very relatable in the Star Wars universe, because Star Wars is this big, epic, allegory of good versus evil. And, not many of us have the Force, can use a lightsaber, can fly a starship, that kind of stuff. And in a lot of ways, she's just trying to keep her life together. She's made some life choices that she may regret now. But there's a lot of growth in the story where she meets back up with her father and comes to, a reconciliation a bit there. She has love interests that she, has up times, good times, and then some bad times where, she makes some mistakes. But it's the still struggling to do better. And she's, like I said, she's just very relatable, I think.
Very, and like I said, she will do bad, but she'll feel bad about it too. But it doesn't necessarily stop her, but she feels bad.
Right. She's also got a neat set of skills between the archaeology and knowledge of other cultures and languages. She can dress up and, be in the upscale casino type places where you'd expect to see Lando Calrissian. But she's also equally at home in Jabba's palace, or they brought her into Galaxy's Edge as a setting. So you really get the impression that she's very, very well traveled. And
she's definitely a what I think would take, and I'm sure I got this from some role-playing game term. She's very much a social chameleon.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. I have not heard that term, but that's exactly her. Yeah.
And she can blend too, because her degree's in archaeology, but she's also what we would call a master hacker, or in the Star Wars universe, they call her a slicer.
Right. And she's very good at doing that on the fly. She doesn't have to have a huge kit or anything like that, because some of her close calls have really, that's the way she survived, was by using her slicing skills. And, sometimes convincing people. She's very charismatic. If she were a D&D character, she'd have a high charisma score, high intelligence score.
Here on Earth, we call it social engineering.
Yes.
Very much sort of that teenage rogue hacker. But I like that, she has the slicing, the sort of cutting edge futuristic skills, but she also looks back. She's an archaeologist.
Right. And appreciates art for its own sake, or, realizes, well, this is really old and maybe powerful, but it's ugly and, has a dark purpose. And, just because it's old doesn't necessarily make it completely valuable. So, like I said, she's just an awesome character. And I really like how with the Marvel Comics getting the Star Wars license again, well, and because they're part of Disney, they just seem to have used her a lot in a lot of different of their comics, and I enjoy that.
Absolutely. And maybe we'll go a little bit. There's some very unique things. I think they took some risk with her. And the first, again, it's different because it's space, but her features are Asian. I think they call it in Star Wars emphatic or something, but she has Asian features. She's youngish, and I think the people who draw her very attractive. She's not the stereotypical comic book woman.
No, she's definitely not a Barbie doll. She's not, and she dresses, sometimes she does dress, very attractively, but she's also dressed, because this is the Star Wars universe. She's not running around in like a chainmail bikini. She's wearing a practical outfit for whatever temperature. She's got, the boots. She's got that really cool aviator cap with the goggles. She's usually well armed. She does her homework to, whatever caper or con or heist she's planning. She does the research to find out about it, and what are the traps, who's been there before, how many times have they tried that, that kind of stuff.
And you sort of mentioned it. She started in the Marvel Darth Vader comics, but she's the first non-movie character to get her own comic title.
Right.
So
and I think they realize that they have somebody who is relatable to multiple generations. I mean, you and I are about the same age, I think, but I would think she would be very relatable to, a millennial or a high school student who's looking for more Star Wars content, especially if they're into The Mandalorian or the Book of Boba Fett. And I'm just I'm with you. You voiced on the podcast before of wanting to see her in a live portrayal. And I think there's a lot of actresses out there who could pull that off. I think she would be very relatable.
Absolutely. And I didn't plan on it, so I didn't give you a hint, kind of put you on the spot. Do you have some people that you think you'd like to see?
Oh, if they were showing her in the time of like, post Rise of Skywalker, I'd want to see Ming-Na Wen, but I know she's got her other characters there. So it'd have to be somebody who's a young Asian, or somebody who you really can't tell what their ethnic group is. I think could really pull it off. But somebody who's not your stereotypical Caucasian.
I think I think Olivia Munn would be a good choice.
I think she'd be great too. Yeah, she would.
And I have a friend really pushing for Aquafina, and I rewatched some of the stuff that Aquafina is in, and I could definitely see that.
Okay, I'd have to. Yeah, I could see that.
So.
There's probably others too. That would be a good one for maybe a breakout, or there's other actresses that I'm just not aware of who would be good in the role.
Now, kind of, and we will definitely be getting back to Dr. A here, but you kind of said we're of the generation that we were at least in some form of school when the original Star Wars rolled out. What are maybe some of your Star Wars memories, or things that you remember growing up, or even maybe in your older age, what you really liked about Star Wars?
There's several. I mean, just real quick, I remember seeing the very first Star Wars in the theater when I was like just shy of 10 years old, and just being completely blown away with it. I had seen a lot of, Westerns with my dad on TV, some John Wayne ones, but also like the Clint Eastwood, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So my dad really liked it. Seeing it from that kind of perspective, I really liked it because I was big into science fiction books at the time, and this really was the first kind of, hey, this is okay. Yeah, it's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, but they still have starships. But these weren't pretty gleaming starships like you saw in Star Trek or 2001: A Space Odyssey. These
or
were
Buck Rogers, or
yeah, exactly, or Flash Gordon. These were like, banged up trucks, or World War II airplanes that had battle damage and stuff. So there was just a realism and a texture that was so rich and so fun. I won't say I enjoyed waiting for Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi, but it was, it's like nowadays having watched Avengers, Infinity War, and then Endgame. There's all that speculation that went on in between, and that gave us some really good products too. Like I was just talking about that with my teenage son with the series that had Princess Izor in it that happened. I can't think of it.
Shadow of the Empire.
Shadow of the Empire. That's it. If you saw all the movies one right after the other, then that book may not have made such an impression on you, but it did to me.
Yeah. And
like the other really big Star Wars memory that I really like is about a year and change ago at Christmas 2020. Me and my family went to Disney World, and we spent a day at Galaxy's Edge. And me and my son, who was 15 at the time, got up early, and we had the passes so you could come in an hour early. And we ran to the back of the park and got on the Millennium Falcon co-pilot ride with like a 20-minute wait.
Oh, nice.
So it was just amazingly quick to get on. And then, it was just pretty much me and him. And there's like two other people, but they didn't want to touch the controls or fly the Falcon or anything like that. So getting to fly the Millennium Falcon with my son was just a tremendous memory as well.
Awesome, yeah. Now, kind of going back a little bit to Dr. Aphra here, the main thing, I think it's fair to describe her as an anti-hero.
Yes.
Yes, and to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the concept of anti-hero. I think it's a very powerful tool, powerful character, a very powerful trope. But are there any anti-heroes that you really like, or maybe the ones that you think? What are your thoughts about the anti-hero?
In literature, I actually kind of really like them because it's not the kind of people you want to associate with in real life, but that's why I like the Boba Fett character a lot when he appeared, because he definitely came across as that anti-hero. I mentioned The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where the old Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns.
Yeah.
I would call him an anti-hero in most of the ones he made. Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, Hang 'em High. I think those were kind of anti-heroes, and I like those. And I think a lot of people rediscovered the love of, pirates with Jack Sparrow. Those are the quintessential anti-heroes. But those go back to, Douglas Fairbanks, some of those old black and white swashbuckling movies that they did back then. The Three Musketeers, some of those you could call anti-heroes.
Yeah. And when I was in high school, or wherever, when I was learning about an anti-hero, the example that always was used was Hamlet.
Oh, right.
So anti-heroes can be very complex, and we see them in the Star Wars universe, a lot, and kind of, Han Solo, he went and he became an anti-hero to a full-fledged hero, but you got Darth Raven, and so there's a lot of, I think, really good anti-heroes in the Star Wars universe.
And I think you have to look for them, though, because again, you really do have the rebels who are usually portrayed as very heroic, and then the Empire is very dark and evil. Where I saw it was if you watched the Clone Wars, the animated ones by Dave Filoni. I have those all on DVD, and I rewatch those a lot because you see the whole spectrum of very noble, very practical, and then some, pretty dark characters, but some of them are all clones. So it's just kind of how they make the choices, and they tell very powerful stories. And I think that's the beauty of the anti-hero. You mentioned when you reminded me of one of my favorite anti-heroes growing up, because everybody, we talk about H.P. Lovecraft and then Robert E. Howard a lot, right, with Conan. But I think people have forgotten about Michael Moorcock and his character Elric of Melniboné. Yeah. And he's definitely an anti-hero. I mean, he was dependent on his sword that, sucked the souls out of its victims for his health and his strength. He betrayed his own people. But he was the central character of just this incredibly compelling story of the forces of law versus chaos.
Absolutely. And who else I was thinking while we were talking? I think that Star Wars is, and we kind of know, we know how he ends his life, but Cassian, I think, they're going to build up as an anti-hero in his series.
I'm really curious to see that. I mean, I have not seen Book of Boba Fett. I've, heard a lot of spoilers, so it's not that big a deal. But, I've really been encouraged by what I've heard from it. I've enjoyed The Mandalorian and stuff. I kind of, again, another anti-hero whose story I really liked was Darth Maul. How he was betrayed by Palpatine and really, hung out to dry. And they explore that in the Clone Wars and even in Star Wars Rebels.
So, and again, this is a spoiler, and I apologize, of sort of Boba Fett. We'll try to keep it to the minimum. But we really can't, if we're going to talk anti-heroes and we're going to talk about Dr. Aphra, we've got to mention that in the Book of Boba Fett, Black Chrysanthemum comes up.
Yeah, I saw all of.
Sorry to spoil that.
So.
But
no,
he's
I knew about
anti-hero.
that a long time ago, and I was really that. Like I said, I just haven't gotten around to watching Book of Boba Fett yet. It's just a scheduling thing.
No, I understand.
But yeah, I was really
he's a great anti-hero.
Oh yeah, absolutely. His early days would be something I'd like to read about in a comic book, or if they did something live or something like that. Especially, I read. I think it was in Vader Down, which is a collection of several of the comics, where you have Chewbacca and Black Chrysanthemum fighting each other. And I think that's just an interesting counterpoint of how those two characters turned out after all the misfortunes and life choices and the way they, responded to the Empire and their enslavement.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that would make it very interesting, and I'd love to see that now that he's an established character, and you don't see the cyber. And again, I'm not trying to spoil anything because you probably saw the pictures, but I thought he was well presented, and keeping with the Wookiee tradition, they don't translate what he says. It's all on acting and the acting of everybody around him, and I thought they did pretty good building his character and keeping it true to the comics.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, if you're going to play a Wookiee, it's all about the full body action and being able to convey things with the hoots, the barks, the language of the Wookiee. Shira Wook, I think it's called.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But yeah, it's just so neat that they don't ever translate it, and I'm glad that they keep that going.
No, absolutely. Now, I'm the first one to admit there's been some hits and some misses, but and we discussed a few. What are some things in post-Disney merger Star Wars that you've liked?
Well, I mentioned Galaxy's Edge, and I like it because they have made it a location that goes through the Luke and Leia Han Solo era to the modern, Rise of Skywalker era with the First Order. And I like how they kept the setting, and it's kind of like Mos Eisley on Tatooine, but a little more varied in terrain, and you can make it very relatable. I also like that they're continuing to come up with new content, but it's all in this shared universe.
Yeah.
So you could see a character who was on Tatooine, and then they appear on, one of these other worlds or one of these more modern stories, or they cross through to Canto Bight or some of the other locations that they've introduced in the comics. They then bring more to life in an on-screen TV show. And I also like that they're doing these kind of short seasons, so it's kind of like a 8-hour or about an 8-hour movie or a 10-hour movie. It's a self-contained story, which gives you a good jumping on point and a satisfying ending. It's not like a TV show that goes 25 episodes and it's always going. I think that's one of the problems with comic books is if you have to portray the same characters over and over and over again, then they never really have a climactic story with a beginning, middle, and ending. And with the Star Wars characters, you can do that because we have seen what happens to Luke. We've seen what happens to Han Solo. We know what happens to General Leia.
Yeah, I think, and you can do. I think they've finally caught on the English style. What the English have known for since the 50s when it comes to TV. Sometimes less is better.
Oh, right. Yeah, like Doctor Who. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we were gonna, like I said, I wanted to discuss one thing, and we don't always discuss the mythos and Lovecraft, but there was one thing that I thought was very cosmic horror with Dr. Aphra in the comics, and that was her crossover with the main comic line in the main characters, Leia, Luke, and Han, in a miniseries about 3 or 4 years ago called The Screaming Citadel.
Right.
Yeah. Which was basically a cosmic horror, gothic horror story told with the Star Wars cast. Did you have any impressions or anything you want to share with the audience about that?
I thought it was kind of like, it was a bit like a haunted house story, or to bring it more to H.P. Lovecraft's stuff, kind of like the Rats in the Walls, where, and the Star Wars, especially with the Sith, does that whole kind of cursed location, haunted location, very, very well with, all of the Jedi temples or the Sith temples that they've shown. And I think it's just a fun way to show Aphra in that situation where she's dark, but she's not the darkest character in that series, especially since she's got, 000 and BT, but then you also have the I can't remember the name of the character, but she's like the
sort of a witch queen,
yeah, the sort of Sith witch, character. But it was just, a lot of fun as a story.
Yeah, and it's definitely one of my favorite, I would say, graphic novels. Definitely right. For those who want to maybe be introduced to Aphra, but wants to be introduced by people they know like Luke and Leia and Han and Chewie. That's a great way.
Absolutely, and you can find the graphic novel pretty easily. When I started looking for it, I found it very easily. I think another thing too is like in university or high school libraries, a lot of times you'll see some of those graphic novels there.
Absolutely.
So you don't have to shell out a huge amount of money or make a big investment compared to like having to buy up all the old individual issues.
Yeah. And kind of how I sort of felt it as sort of a creepy, sort of gothic setting. So when I read comics, there's certain voices I hear in my head, right? So if I'm reading Tank Girl, it's Lori Petty's voice I hear, right? I'm reading Batman, it's Kevin Conway's voice.
Yep.
When I read that, it was Vincent Price's voice.
Ooh, yeah. Okay.
So, and definitely. So if you like Star Wars, you like Vincent Price, and he doesn't appear, but this is the type of science fiction. If they had special effects like this in the 50s and 60s, he'd be in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I think we asked you last time, and again, hopefully we'll get you back in before 5 months, but I think we asked you this last time. If there was any one project that you could do, don't have to worry about finances, copyright, just whatever supporting group time you need, what is your dream artistic project?
Well, it's changed in 5 months, actually. I kind of thought, if you've ever been to a Renaissance fair, you know how a lot of places they have a semi-permanent location where they set up buildings there.
Yeah.
I think it would be really cool. I don't know that this would be commercially profitable. You probably could only do it around Halloween, but an H.P. Lovecraft, Clark Ashton Smith, Robert E. Howard themed like Halloween village, kind of like a Ren Fair village, but all about their creations. So, you might start in like the Miskatonic Library, and then nice. You go, depending on, and this could be multi-path where you just wander around with your group, and, you might be pulled into like an Egyptian thing, like imprisoned with the pharaohs. You might be pulled into, I think it was the city of Aram, where they're, Aram. Yeah, you're probably pronouncing it closer than I am. Where Robert E. Howard's The Black Stone was. So Aram is the lost city in the Middle East. The Black Stone, it's a Hungarian name, Herzegovina, or okay. I'm confusing the two of them, but that kind of a thing. So you kind of have you take some of the stories and you just kind of make them physical places, and they don't have to be tremendously complex, because you would make them creepy with your like haunted house special effects, so sounds, bad lighting, wind effects, the sound of rats going through the walls. So you'd have all these different locations that you could make reasonably, it wouldn't cost you an arm and a leg, if you were disciplined about it. But you use that same kind of haunted house engineering aspect, and then you have this. Maybe you would do it with in Providence in a Necronomicon or something like that. That would be really cool, because then you could do the costuming and makeup and a lot of those kind of things.
Yeah, and so no, I would love to. So if you do pull that off, let me know, and I'll try to get over there. But yeah, no, it was Streffelkar, or not pronounce it right. But yes,
okay, that's right,
Streffelkar. So, but I've been thinking about this differently, and I think about this question. I think, I want to write this book, and I want to tie this story. If I had a dream project, it's always been in the past I wanted to be in charge. This is what I want to present. I would love that some sort of Disney, preferably Star Wars, but I'm not the MCU. I would love to be the best boy for one of those series, and that's the guy that. The gopher, the guy that gets dumped on, and we'll send you somebody, and we'll send you our best boy. I would love to have some sort of job where I could learn all these things, how they do it.
That would be cool. Yeah, that would be a lot. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I have, like I said, really enjoyed talking to you again. Not only talking to you, but talking about, by far, one of my favorite literary characters ever. And hopefully we will have you on sooner than 5 months, or on again sooner than 5 months.
That sounds good. Again, I really enjoyed the topic. I really liked discussing Dr. Aphra, and I was really honored you asked me to come back.
Well, thank you. Hey.
That was a good break. I ran around the block. It's rainy. I jumped over puddles. I did not wipe out at all. I grabbed a coffee and then made it back to the studio in time to talk to Dave about Formless, Spawn of FTHAGGUA. Dave, what do you know about these guys, and how would you use them in your D&D campaign?
So, I have to admit, the first I really came up with them was a Call of Cthulhu role-playing game supplement.
Trail of FTHAGGUA?
Yes, or the Compact.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which was kind of a lot of bulk was just cut out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's where I first came across them.
Cool.
Since then, of course, I realized, it's from the tale of Satampra
Zeros, yeah,
by Clark Ashton Smith.
Yeah.
And so one of the things about so that story basically is Clark Ashton Smith running a 2-person thieves campaign for himself.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And you can definitely see that I think this was one of the stories that influenced Gygax at all.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as such, I think that this may have been sort of the inspiration. I don't know this for a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised. Just the gelatinous cube, the green slimes, the black pudding, all these sort of slimy creatures that have been in since D&D since the beginning. I suspect that this influenced them.
Okay. I want to talk about where I specifically think and who I specifically think the Formless Spawn is. There is a Clark Ashton Smith story, I can't remember off the top of my head, where the king of the old. It may be from Satamper Zeros, but I can't remember if it's that or if it's from another story. But the king of the city that is abandoned, that Zeros and his buddy Tyriuv, they go to steal from, and they run across this thing, this inky black torrent of black quicksilvers. It's described as a torrent of black quicksilver. The reason that the capital city was abandoned was there was this bandit king who was of Vormith, and he was spawned as his parents were Vormith and S'thaggua, I believe. And he was this amazing bandit king, and they chopped off his head, and that didn't kill him. And then they bound him in copper, and binding him in a copper sarcophagus, like a lozenge kind of thing, didn't matter because he changed form somehow and burst out and became this thing that just started killing everyone in the city. And everyone was like, we need to get out of the city, so they moved the capital. And I think this formless spawn, the reason that everyone left is still there, and it's just grown, and it worships its father or grandfather, S'thaggua. So that's why it's found at the temple. And I don't think how it's treated in Call of Cthulhu is a good idea. It treats it like it's this thing that happens, but it's there's one Vormith S'thagguan, and I think it's the same thing that is encountered in the mound, but it's just moved somewhere else because of the fact that it's been thousands of years. And it may not necessarily be S'thaggua, but it's so related to S'thaggua, it might as well be considered S'thaggua to human concepts of S'thaggua. So that's my 2 cents. I'll make that into a short story someday.
So I love that this underground shrine or the Underdark whatever is surrounded with a moat of quicksilver.
Yeah.
And that it has, the formless spawn or gladness cubes or whatever you want, just sort of jumping out. And I love that, there's sort of this graphite metal gray color. For some reason, I just think that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think you're definitely right that they're also mentioned. They're mentioned in the Mountains of Madness, but they're just thrown out.
Yeah. I think it's just kind of to be oh yeah, that those things, those other shape-shifting gross things.
But in the mound, it's sort of interesting because these subterranean people, they set out the scientific expedition. They discover the form of the spawn, the formless spawn, and then they change their religion.
Yeah,
they go from reachers or followers of S'thaggua, and they rededicate themselves to Shug-Nugaroth.
Yeah,
and I don't think that I don't think they explain that really in the mound.
I kind of feel once you've encountered the formless spawn, once you encounter the formless spawn and realize that it is the direct result of S'thaggua interfering with the genetic structure of a people who are probably similar to the Kenyan, underground subterranean group. Well, I mean, the Vormith weren't necessarily subterranean. They lived inside of a mountain and maybe went down into it. And these may even be like the descendants of the Formeth. I don't know. But
and that makes sense because can't the Dark Young be that much worse than the Formless Spawn? But for some reason that they just completely abandoned their theology. And that kind of makes sort of a cool story-wise. These were once men or something.
No. This is like people have been like, what's so blasphemous about FTHAGGUA? Is it like a lurid kind of like phallic kind of thing? And it's like, what's blasphemous is what FTHAGGUA does to your genetic structure, not only maybe not even physically, maybe like corrupting of your mind, corrupting through a way of a larger understanding of how the universe works, which, I mean, once you're able to understand how fourth, fifth, sixth dimensional space works, you're I don't know, kind of talk about interdimensional FOMO. Like, there's stuff that exists. Like, you can't see things that are important to other creatures' religions because the fact that you just don't have eyes for that. You don't have enough eyes, and they don't work properly. You can't even
don't see that spectrum.
Yeah, you can't even say the name of your god properly because of the fact that you have, like, some horrible mouth that was created because of the fact that some starfish guys wanted to make fleshy bulldozers a billion years ago. Just like how the shape of our space shuttles is determined by how the Romans built their roads. I mean, our mouths in the Cthulhu mythos are a direct result of something that happened on accident while making shotguns.
Well, I think that makes for a pretty interesting D&D game.
Oh, yeah.
Get like an alchemist that's hiring the party because it wants to do research on, all these, puddings and cubes and slimes. And then all of a sudden finds out, these were all once human beings or genetically the same as human beings.
Yeah. Or you have an alchemist who has, like, some corrupted text, like some broken, like, the only thing that's left is a torrent of black quicksilver. And, just like something about, like, an, not quite, reading it, and it's like, oh, something about riches in a capital city and a torrent of black quicksilver. Ooh, that sounds amazing. I need to learn how to make black quicksilver. And then hires people to go to this ancient city that's like way up in a frozen north where no one even lives anymore or something like that, to go and find the secret of black quicksilver, which ultimately you find out isn't a what, but a who, You ultimately may not. If you defeat it, you have the riches of the city, but it's not like you can take it back to the wizard or necromancer and be like, oh, hey, this is how you make black quicksilver.
I think that they definitely. I think anything that you've got slimes in, you can, bring up to 11 by adding formless spawn.
Oh yeah. It's like hyper intelligent slime that hates humanity. Hates technology. Hates who knows what a formless spawn can do. Formless spawn are crazy. And I was thinking, what if a formless spawn, I don't know, not necessarily makes itself into a shape of a human, but just like goes inside of a human and hides out, or takes over somehow.
And I'll show you where I think there's a classic example of this.
Clayface.
No, X-Files, the black oil.
Oh, yeah.
I really think that, and we know Chris Carter definitely was aware of the mythos.
Oh yeah.
But I've always thought that maybe there was a connection between the black oil, and the formless spawn.
Ooh, I like that.
And there's quite a few episodes you can borrow that, including the first X-File movie.
Yeah.
Where the black oil infects people or so I think that's that gives you a lot of things, not only from medieval or adventures, but modern storytelling.
Oh yeah, and just like I was thinking, and black spawn, if it's just kind of like stuck in a city in the middle of nowhere, what if say researchers find it and bring back samples from the South Pole or Finland or something like that, Greenland, and then it thaws out. And then it gets into the sewer system, or what you're worried about is the thing you're worried about it leaving and infecting more people, or that kind of thing. You're stuck on an oil rig and this stuff that's like it's not petroleum, but it looks like oil, and it's slowly affecting everyone, kind of. I mean, and then it builds up enough that it's actually starts building enough to build up enough mass to like not just be something that slips in and out of ears and eyes and mouths and noses, that it's big enough to like, at one point in time, your heroes see it and it's like, oh my god, did you see that thing? It's the size of a rattlesnake. And then the next time you see it, it's like, you think it's like maybe a rat or something like that. That kind of stuff. And then at some point in time, you don't see it, but you hear it for a while you're like coming up with your plan, or your main characters are coming up with a plan, and then it's showdown time. You have to fight whoever's on the oil rig, or at the fortress,
or
the submarine or whatever, like the people who have interest in like keeping it alive for whatever reason. We can study it, we can turn it into a weapon. It's an alchemist's dream, whatever the premise. You have the people who want to keep it alive, you have to fight them. You have people who want to use it and take it as a weapon, you have to fight them, whatever it is. And then you have to like finally ultimately fight it, or go, we just got to blow this up and get out of here. Do the B-movie 1950s. We just got to blow this thing up, hope that the debris crushes it well enough, and
nuke it from orbit.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh man, Aliens would have been a much shorter but a less frustrating movie if they just would have nuked it from orbit. A lot of movies, if they just would have done what the first person says at the very beginning of the movie, a lot less interesting, but you wouldn't go, why are you doing that?
Yep.
Why would you eat enchiladas before you go camping? Sorry. I had to make another Friday the 13th joke. All right. Do we have a Friday the 13th this March? I don't.
Do not think so.
That's a bummer. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Dave, before we drift off and sneak out of this dilapidated city we call Oleander, anything else you wanted to say about Formless Spawn?
No, I think we pretty much got it covered.
Yeah. I don't know. I was thinking, it's like, ooh, that'd be cool to like drop into like a Star Wars RPG and then be like, oh, what happens with Formless Spawn and a lightsaber? And then that made me think, what happens with Shoggoths and lightsabers? I don't know, but we can talk about that some
and
other
there's
time.
kind of a, real quickly, got me thinking, for Star Wars, there definitely is sort of that sort of disease, sort of plague, like in Dead Trooper.
Sure, yeah.
Animated for zombies. And so maybe you could do that to a regular game where if someone gets killed by one of these cubes or formless spawns, they come back as zombies.
Or it doesn't animate the body, but it takes over the flesh and the bones and everything. And maybe it can't animate armor, or it can't animate non-organic materials like plasteel or I don't know, Beskar steel. I can't remember the names of Star Wars stuff off the top of my head right now. Anyway, but yeah, no, just like have some slime monster walking around in a suit of armor. Star Wars, Dungeons and Dragons, police riot armor in New York. I don't know. There's that's scary.
Stop me before I think about formless spawn again.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, that's enough for leader of the pack of the fire vampires and the lone wolf slime, the formless spawn, in my opinion. But I think you could probably have formless spawn wherever Tsathoggwa's putting down his seed. Maybe that's the blasphemous thing. Some sort of, I don't know. We don't need to go into that right now. We'll talk about that with Tsathoggwa. All right, everyone. Thank you again for listening. Copper Cow Coffee is our sponsor this month, as last month. And also check out the T-shirts in the shop. We've got new ones coming soon. And yeah, and again, we've got the YouTube channel, People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. It's the one that has the Cthulhu logo, not the one that, anyway, it's an old one. It's the one that's updated more recently than other things. And thank you again for listening. And thank you, Dave, for being part of this show and helping it grow.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, all right. Well, we'll see you next time, everyone.
Bye.
You're listening to KZOM, Oleander Public Radio.